The only reason those schools districts are state-run school districts is because they've been abject failures for the people who live there. That's the only reason. The state doesn't take them over because, like, we got nothing better to do. And the real problem here is that a few things. One, we have local school districts in many urban areas who care more about their union patrons than they care about the families who live in those communities. And the proof of that is I saw some statement put out by Mayor Baraka today, where he's complaining about the effect that charter schools have on the Newark public school budget. What I'd remind the mayor is that the reason charter school enrollment is going up is because families are choosing public charter schools. The second thing I'd remind the mayor is that charter schools are public schools. They are public schools. And so what the mayor wants to do is freeze any new expansion of charter schools, freeze any new development of charter schools, so those families are forced back into the failed schools that drove them to want to make the choice to begin with. This is so illogical that if it operated anywhere else but in New Jersey, under the auspices of the New Jersey Education Association, we would think this is ridiculous. But here we somehow say, well, it's just the way it is. Parents in these school districts are saying, no, we're not going to have that any longer. The second thing is the mayor complains that they had a $72 million budget hole that he says is created by these charter schools, that they asked me for $36 million and that I only gave them an additional $27 million. Now, this, of course, comes from a school district that gets hundreds of millions of dollars from New Jersey state taxpayers every year because of a failed and I believe unconstitutional court requirement that we put disproportionate funds into a small number of school districts. And the mayor, in the greatest ironic part of his statement, says that this is causing his property taxes to go up. Well, have him come see Huddle. Ask about his property taxes in Englewood. And what happens, because I can't give him the school aid I want to give him because the legislature and the Supreme Court says that somehow the only way to improve education in Newark and Patterson and Trenton and Camden, oh, and by the way, Hoboken and Union City and Jersey City, is to give them more money. And every time I give them more money from state income tax revenue, it's less money that goes to Huddle. It's got to end. It's got to end. And so I find the whole thing laughable. And I think that Assemblyman Wimberly, instead of wasting time on press conferences in Trenton, should perhaps focus on having more effective schools in Patterson. And Mayor Baraka, who of course drew his paycheck from the public school system before he stopped taking the paycheck from there and took his paycheck from the City Hall taxpayers, he doesn't want any of this to change. He complains in the press release about the teachers that we're not letting into classrooms anymore, but we're continuing to pay. He says that's a waste of money. I agree. Let me fire them. Because if they're too ineffective to be in a classroom, why the hell are we paying them? You know why we're paying them? Because the teachers union owns this state. That's why. Because we can't fire the least able, for goodness sakes. Then they wouldn't pay dues anymore. And then, the head of the NJEA wouldn't make $400,000 a year, plus their teacher pension. So, Michael, I have no sympathy at all for urban leaders who continue to sell their constituents down the river because the NJEA writes them checks and that they're scared to death of these people. I've never been scared of these people from the minute I announce for public office, and from the time till I leave public office, I won't be scared of them, and I'll call them out. And you know who else is calling them out? Urban parents. Why are there thousands of people still on the waiting list in Newark for charter schools? Because they think the public schools are doing such a great job? No, because they want something better for their children. You know what? They deserve something better for their children. My children shouldn't be the only ones who get a great education because we live in a place where they can get one. It's wrong. It continues to be wrong. But every time I go to the legislature about this, I hear the same old song. No, we can't do that. Why? Well, we can't do that. We all know why they can't do that. Bought and paid for. bought and paid for. And there's no other reason not to do it. Everybody knows this stuff is true. And the last piece of this is public charter schools were set up as laboratories so that you can learn what was working there and you can apply it to the public schools. But here's the deal. You can't apply it to the public schools. You know why? Because they won't change the work rules. They won't give principals more flexibility. They won't have longer school days. They won't have a longer school year. They won't require the things that charter schools require of their families and their children. It's an outrage. And I am sickened by the fact that they're down there playing the theater they're playing down in Trenton. But believe me, I'm not the least bit surprised. Not the least bit surprised. It's the same stupid show day after day after day. And whether you're talking about this thing or Atlantic City or the Transportation Trust Fund or any other stuff, it's the same stupid show every day. And people are tired of it, and so am I.